Good afternoon, everybody. We're having a bit of feedback. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Entrepreneurship to the Point, where we equip, inform, and inspire. This is an informed session where we'd like to really just unpack the new fund that has been brought to market by the Ubank and the Black Business Council. Please do follow us on YouTube. We start streaming live on YouTube as well as Entrepreneurship to the Point. I'm Sean Tienerson, and I'll be your host. I'm also joined by my colleague Nkateko. We'll be fielding some questions from the participants. And our special guest today is Lutando Vutula, and he's the CEO of Ubank, and he will be unpacking the new fund, Township fund, that they've brought to market. Lutando, good afternoon. If you can maybe just unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Sean, and thank you for having us. Did you hear me?
I heard you, yes. I think
Yes.
sound was delayed there. So,
Okay.
so welcome. To all the participants as well, just want to say that we are using the chat function below. So please do use the chat function for any of your questions. Also take the opportunity to introduce yourself and share with us where you're from. Please do go to our YouTube channel and subscribe for any future webinars as well. And then we will be taking your questions as we go along. Lutando, Ubank has had such a history in terms of being a banker for the people in South Africa. Can you just unpack quickly the history of Ubank to where it is to date?
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it's only a pleasure, I think, to be here. But just, to your point about Ubank and us having a rich history. Ubank, as many of you might know, is the former Teba Bank. So we have been in mining for the last 40, 45 years. We used to be called Teba Financial Services. And then in 2000, we got a license. And we've been focusing in the mining space, in particular gold and platinum. I think giving financial services to mine workers in those two sectors, but obviously we have now spread to other sectors as well, coal, manganese, and so forth. And look, our strategy going forward is really to be a workers' bank of choice. And Sean, maybe when I talk about workers' bank of choice, we are quite specific in terms of, we want to assist blue-collar workers in this country, whether it's teachers, nurses, police. We think that we understand their plight more, and I believe that we can solution better for them. And yes, another sector that we, believe is something or a sector that we need to contribute towards, it's small business enterprises.
Yeah. So what was so you guys have announced in May, the announcement came up around the R1 billion Township and Rural Economy Fund. What was the catalyst for the setting up of this fund?
Okay, so maybe in the last, I can say possibly 12 months as Ubank, we looked at, where we believe opportunities for growth are. And certainly SMME is one sector that I've mentioned. And then we also said that, for us to be successful here, who do we partner with? Okay, and what areas or sectors do we need to intervene? And certainly, the Black Business Council was a natural partner, I think, to us. As I've said, because of where we want to intervene, and I suppose also their members are mainly in the sectors where we want to make an intervention. And Sean, I think our view is that, job creation, whether in South Africa or globally, is going to come from small businesses.
Correct.
Reality is big business, you open the paper every day, big business is looking at cutting jobs. The future of employment is definitely coming from small businesses. And therefore, we need to be able to solution for the small businesses. And our view also is that the specific sectors, township economy, rural economy, how do we assist, in particular, Black business to succeed? And also have access to funding, because the big issue sometimes is about how do I access the funding?
Yes. And Lutando, so we've been inundated with a lot of questions around it. How does the mechanism work? How's the fund structured? Let's start getting into some of the mechanics around it. So the fund would be a 250 million per year for the next 5 years, 4 years. Where
okay?
Is it
now let me explain and unpack the fund itself, because so we were quick to go to market about announcing it, with the BBC. In fact, what is happening is that Ubank is providing R1 billion over 4 years, all right, which is Ubank. Part of our MOU with Black Business Council is that they will match that. So essentially, we should actually have a 2 billion rand fund, of which we are saying 500 million rand per annum for the next 4 years. We understand that BBC does not have the money, but they obviously have the ability to raise money. Now, Sean, it's important, and that's why I said that, we chose our partners carefully here, because one of the reasons we partnered with BBC, and one of the reasons we said in our MOU with them, guys, we can put in a billion, because we know $1 billion is not enough. I mean, the need is much more than that. And we are not claiming that we're going to sort out all the problems, but we felt that for every rand that we put, they must then go and lobby and get a rand, so that we can make this fund at least 500 per annum, okay? Now, one of the reasons actually we have delayed in accepting applications, finalizing the criteria, is because the BBC is now busy with negotiations with potential funding partners. I mean, I do want to say we were even having a conversation yesterday with them that, the criteria, the sectors that we are going to intervene, we are busy now finalizing the discussion with the other funder that's coming in with the other 250 million rand for this financial year. And hopefully, I mean, our view is that we're talking about, a 2 billion rand fund over 2 years, but we think it's going to be much more than that, just because of the interest that we have seen from potential funders.
Okay, so are you able to disclose the additional funder that's come on board as yet?
Well, look, I do want to say to you, Sean, that we have really gone to government in the main, whether it's SOEs, whether it's government itself from the fiscus. I do want to say that there's certain provinces that have specifically come to us and said, listen, we also want to put in money. I'll tell you why we like government, because government, the reality is they will come with more affordable, or what we can call patient capital, which obviously will make it also much easier for the entrepreneur, okay? So, and also we are talking to some of the development finance institutions who are also willing to say, but guys, we can come in with patient capital so that we can be able to make it easy for the entrepreneur. I mean, this is still loan funding. I do want to emphasize that we are bringing, I think, as a bank, purely because, as you would know, I mean, our money doesn't belong to us, it belongs to our depositors. So we are coming in definitely with loan funding, but we want to match that with patient capital from government, from DFIs. And Sean, there's definite interest from both parties, from government, and also from some of the DFIs as well.
Okay, so Lutando, we'll get into some of the mechanisms around it. I think that let's unpack the definition that you guys are looking at. So you're saying township and rural economies. What businesses would you be targeting within that definition?
Look, I mean, our view is, we obviously, there's a sweet spot here that we are trying to look at. I mean, we don't want to be all things to all men. Our view is that, in the townships, typically you're going to find, some retailers, that are operating there, and hair salons are operating there, some spaza shops that are operating there, and there are also some ICT companies that are operating in the townships and in the rural areas as well. So these are the businesses that we want to support, and of course, agriculture is another sector that we definitely want to support. in many ways than one. There's a lot of proposals that we have received, very innovative, some of them, because there's a lot of wealth in the rural areas. You would understand that a lot of people and a lot of businesses, do have, a lot of people who run, whether it's cattle farming or growing some vegetables that they want to sell. And these are the kinds of businesses that we really want to support, but also bring in some technology, as an enabler so that they can become successful.
With those various areas, for instance, agriculture, that you guys are going to be focusing on, is it only going to be debt finance? So what's the financial instruments that the fund will be using?
Our preference, that is why, I've had so many, we've been inundated with, questions about, guys, we want the criteria, guys, we want to submit the application. Now, we have deliberately, even yesterday, we were having this conversation with BBC to say, rather we do this thing correct the first time around and make sure that we can support as many businesses as possible. Now, the reality is that, as I've said, Sean, our money is loan funding. The reason we are patient and progressing well with discussions with government is because we want to make sure that there's patient capital. So for every entrepreneur that gets a loan from us, we want to make sure that there's some form of patient capital so that we can make it more affordable, and especially during this COVID time.
So when we're saying we want to make it a bit more affordable, Lutando, what are we talking about from an...
We want to have a blend of debt, a blend hopefully of grant or some non-interest bearing funding that becomes available to the entrepreneur. That's basically what we mean.
Okay, so we inundated with a lot of questions on the chat. I'm going to bring my colleague in, Nkateko, that's going to just field a couple of questions that she has and that some of the listeners are having. For everyone that's listening, please note that this will be available on YouTube as well. So our channel is Entrepreneurship to the Point. Please go and subscribe and you'll be able to get all the information and the recording available. Welcome, Nkateko.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, Lutando, and everyone watching. Quite an interesting fund that you guys are setting together, and there's quite a lot of interest, especially in the chat box from the people watching. And some of the questions around that are in connection with small business banking. Is Ubank now opening themselves up to provide small business banking services to SMMEs?
Certainly. In fact, I do want to emphasize, and thank you, Kato, because this is very important. I mean, for every loan that we will be giving to the entrepreneur, the expectation is that the entrepreneur will bank with us. Mm-hmm. So definitely, in fact, that is final. So we will be opening up a business account. We're going to be advertising that, I think, in the next month. So definitely there's no question about that.
Okay, and then just tagging on to that question, is this sort of like the bank strategy in terms of diversifying your risk and portfolio, given the fact that you've been highly concentrated, especially around the mining belt? Are you now moving to the broader SMME market?
Absolutely. Whoever asked that question, maybe they can come and join us because they are spot on.
That's myself. I'm here.
Yeah, but definitely, yes, absolutely, yes, because we've had a concentration risk in mining, and now this is part of diversifying, I think, our risk.
Okay.
So maybe just Nkateko on that question as well, with the aim of providing the support specifically to smaller businesses, and the fact that you guys have some patient capital in that blend as well, are you going to be providing assistance and business development support to the businesses? So outside of the funding, ensuring that they're able to operate sustainably in order to service the loan?
Absolutely, Sean. I can't overemphasize that again, because look, for small businesses, the argument that we have is that, I might be a great plumber, but I might be a terrible business person, So we need to make sure that the post-funding support. And I do want to say that, Sean, that we're working again with institutions, agencies, and sometimes, small businesses that offer these services. we are partnering with them so that we can offer them to the entrepreneurs, because post-funding support is exceptionally important. Training that we will need to give to the SMME, that's also very important as well. So we will definitely be providing. So when we give you the loan, this is what we will tell you we are expecting you to do. And even sometimes, I mean, some of the discussions that we are also having is that some people might say, listen, you know what, I actually want to do, I don't know, farming, but I can't do this business plan. Already I'm farming, but I want to expand my business, but I can't do a business plan. So we are talking to partners as well, who people actually in our website, you will see, if you want to be assisted, for example, in registering a business, with my accounting, with a business plan, you will go into our website and there will be service providers that can actually assist you with that. And that's why I keep on going back to what I've raised. Patient capital is important for the success of this.
How different is your due diligence process and credit vetting going to be compared to our commercial lenders out there, our commercial banks?
Yeah.
I mean, one of
now
the
that's a very important
businesses are facing is that they get ruled out for not being bankable because the credit vetting process is just too onerous.
I agree with you. And yes, it has to be a differentiator. Now, look, I mean, in our experience and in what we've seen, is that, there's two issues sometimes where that actually deny access to financing for small business, and especially Black business. One is the issue of collateral. So we have to be innovative around that. And there is ways and means of actually doing that. I mean, if I don't, some people might say, listen, you know what, if I finance you, I need you to bring some collateral. But if you don't have it, what else can I do? So, and there's ways, for example, I mean, we are thinking, saying, listen, receivables. So if I'm financing you, you could seed your income or whatever. So you don't need to have a house in Balito or in Cape Town to give us as a security. So that's for sure. So we have to be innovative around that. And we've accepted that. The second thing, which is always a problem, which you've raised as well, is the adverse credit information. Now, we will obviously have to, and we've taken that decision, and this has been the discussion with BBC. There will be genuine cases which we have to look at them on a case by case. So just because you've got an adverse credit rating doesn't mean you will not qualify for funding. However, we will have that conversation with yourself. But if you are reckless about it, so certainly we will also not give you funding. So we're going to treat it on a case by case, but certainly as a rule, that's not what's going to deny you funding from us.
Okay. Nkateko, over to you for some more questions.
Thanks for that, Luthando. And then in terms of accessibility of the fund, we do understand the demographic that you are targeting in terms of applicants. How do they access the facility? Are they going to be using Ubank branches?
Yes, in fact, our preference is going to be online. In fact, the conversation now, so what we did was this with the BBC. We announced the fact that, look, we've got an MOU, we want to set up the fund. Clearly, there was interest, and we did that deliberately. So their members obviously went to them, because one of the other things that's important here is whatever solution we bring must not be a solution that we think entrepreneurs need, but we must also get input from them. So I can tell you a week ago, BBC had a discussion with their members. They've given input in terms of what sectors, possible average loans that they would like, okay? And also we've agreed that there will be a portal that BBC is setting up for their own members. But as Ubank, we'll have our own portal and our own website. But I do know that BBC members can go through the BBC portal, the BBC website. So that is what we are finalizing now, so that when we launch this, hopefully in the next month or so, we've got everything up and ready.
Okay.
But our branches will be available. Our branches will be available, but the preference would be online. Even if you walk into a branch, they will just assist you in submitting your application online. So, so that we can make it easy for somebody who's in Cape Town, somebody who's in Messina, somebody who's in Lusikisiki, or whether in Joburg. It should make no difference.
Okay.
So with the online portal, sorry, I just want to get some clarification there around. So we're saying timelines, we're looking at the end of June?
No, the end of July, early August. That's when we want to do it. Yes.
July, early August. Where would businesses need to go to? Would it be what's the Ubank?
So so the plan that we've actually put together, a work plan. So the plan is that we are definitely going to announce the launch. So we're going to publicize it. It will be on television. It will be in the newspapers. It will be on our website. So end July, early August. In fact, towards the end of July, that's when we will start running ads on it. And so people will get to know about it. And hopefully the people that attend your webinars, Sean, you will also keep advertising it, and we will also give you the information so that you can tell them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that people, please do subscribe to the newsletter, www.ettp.co.za. Once the fund's up and running as well, we'll bring Lutando back to be able to unpack some details. Nkateko, some more questions there?
I think more on the mechanics of the product offering. RLG would just like to find out, in terms of bridging finance, would that be one of the products that the fund will offer?
Absolutely. You know, for now, I mean, at a very high level, and please, I must not be short for this, you know, purchase order financing is something that we want to look at. Okay. We want to look at asset financing. We want to look at bridging finance. We want to look at working capital.
Okay. All right. And then on the asset finance, back to the issue of collateral, will you be taking general notarial bond on the assets to sort of secure the loan?
Yes, we're going to be looking at that, you know, receivables in the main. I think that's going to be our focus.
Okay. And the follow-up question from RLG is, are there any opportunities to invest in the fund as equity partners?
Yes, we can have a separate conversation there, because we would need to understand, you know, what the terms and conditions, you know, from their side. Because look, the intention, as I've said earlier, is to make it as affordable as possible. So even from ourselves, you know, we want to make sure that, I mean, even the interest rates that we charge here are exceptionally affordable. Because, you know, once they succeed, the entrepreneur, we also succeed as well.
Okay. And then at this stage, do you have an indication in terms of the minimum loan amount and the maximum loan amount that a business can access?
Yes, we do. We're looking at a minimum, which really will be an outlier of 50,000. We're looking again at a maximum of an outlier of, again, 20 million.
And then you mentioned patient capital a lot. So tagging on that, in terms of repayment terms, how patient will this be?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole point, you know, to say, does it come in as grant, you know, what payment holidays do we offer, you know? So that, of course, will depend now on once we've looked at how we're going to structure it. But really, that's really the intention from our side, to make it as affordable as possible, I think, for the entrepreneur. And I mean, let's understand that we're giving these loans during COVID. It's tough times for the businesses. You might want to give them a bit of a payment holiday, you know, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 12 months, whether it's 3 months, depending, of course, on the business case that you would have in front of you. Because normally with these things, you know, you don't want to make you price on risk. So you look at what you have in front of you and then make a determination.
So, okay. Lutando, sometimes it's maybe easier to ask the question in reverse. Are there industries or types of businesses that you will not be funding?
Yes, well, I think that's an important question. I mean, I think the one area which we're now reluctant to finance, it would be property. We want to first understand that, you know, because property, you know, is really not for sissies.
Why? So most funds and most funds that's been set up has always excluded property. Property is one of the most untransformed industries that in South Africa. Commercial banking excludes a lot of first entrants into that industry. Why?
Look, Sean, I've spent about 15 years of my life in property, both at the development and also at some point I was fortunate to run Absa Home Loans, their Absa Development Company. I used to work for an institution called the National Housing Finance Corporation. So I've got, I think, a fair understanding of property. Now, the one thing about property, as you would know, first thing is that it's around how you finance it. You got short-term funding for an asset that is long-term. Okay, so which is the starting point. I'm going to give you a loan for 10, 15, 20 years. But I've got money for short-term money, all right? That is why you would find in many instances, and because it also holds up a lot of your capital for a very long period of time. And again, when it comes to, you know yourself, the best way to finance a loan is through your property, because that's likely where you will get your best rates. Okay, so property is not very easy. And you need to, and I think for now, we think that we need to understand that market better. We don't understand it. Forget. The second one, of course, is we have to understand the hospitality and the tourism industry in terms of where that's going. And I'm talking now, and because of COVID. We do understand that in terms of hospitality, as you know, you do need to have permits, you need to, there's not enough traveling that is happening. So those businesses are really under stress. There's no question about it. And so the areas that so those two, we know that we're not very excited about those two areas.
Okay, so we've got hospitality, we've got property, anything else?
So far, those are the two that we've highlighted. And I mean, I do want to say that whilst we say it as Ubank, our partners still believe we need to play there. So but we need to then understand if we were to do it, you know, how would we do it and what products we would have, but we're not really keen in financing there as Ubank.
Okay.
In the future, of course, it will be completely something different. We're talking about a point in time, which is now.
Okay. We've got a few questions around synergies and how people can get in contact. We've got Ernest, who is the chairperson of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, that would like to get in contact and discuss some synergies. How best is people to get in contact with Ubank to potentially explore synergies?
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, you can email us, n.williams@ubank.co.za, and we can set up time and then have a conversation and see how we can actually deal with some of the potential synergies that could be there.
Okay.
Just an interesting question from Sam Marshall, because you will agree, Lutando, traditionally banks use systems to be able to then assess suitability of an application. So he wants to know what systems have been put in place to make sure that the bank has the ability to evaluate on a case-by-case basis instead of using a blanket approach when assessing applications.
Okay, so there will be, I mean, and I'm sure he understands, there will be applications that would be straight through passes. So those are easy to deal with because you've qualified, you are fine. So we just give you the loan. But I think the point is for every loan that gets declined, it will be referred to a credit person who will then make proper assessment on it. So they'll be straight through passes. I mean, passes are not a problem, but the issue is where there's a decline. And that decline will definitely be referred to a credit person who will look at it and then have a conversation with the potential applicant. Now, the other thing I do want to say is that they are provinces. I mean, I had somebody talking about, I think Sean mentioned Gauteng, but I can tell you, for example, the Eastern Cape government has committed that they will give us 200 million rand outside, by the way, this program. So they said, Ubank put 200 million, we are putting 200 million. We are currently finalizing agreements with them. And again, I can promise you that their money is going to be patient capital, which is going to assist entrepreneurs in the Eastern Cape. We will then discuss with them what sectors do they want us to focus on, because we would prefer not to dictate, but to have the conversation with the provincial government or with the partner for that matter to say, this is where I want to see an intervention. This is the kind of sectors I want to focus on. These are the loans average sizes I want you guys to be able to give, because these funds that we are talking about, whilst we want them to make a dent, but we also understand that they are not going to solve all problems for all entrepreneurs. But what we want to do and commit is transparency, I think, from our side, because that's very important. We have to be transparent. We will get back to you and tell you why you have not qualified. I mean, that's important for us.
Okay. Just one more question, Sean, before I hand back over to you. I think there's quite a huge interest around the interest rate that you're going to be charging. And appreciating the fact that that's dependent on an application basis
absolutely.
and the level of risk. So maybe talk us through what your pricing structure looks like. And
yeah, because that one, I mean, of course, when it comes to the interest rate, I mean, it will obviously depend on the risk. As I said, each application will be assessed based on the risk. The good thing, of course, is that interest rates have gone down. So they are at an all-time low. I think what we will obviously be looking at, as I've said, is going to be the business itself. I mean, that's the first thing. We obviously will look at the jockey. You know, do you have experience in this thing? Have you done it before? And, you know, the markets, you know, the risk that's associated with the market that you are looking. I mean, for example, I just told you earlier on, for example, let's say that we were asked to go into property now, or asked to go into tourism. We're going to have to be really convinced that, you know, you really have to show us that, you know, this business has great chances of succeeding, or the probability of success is very high, because we're still concerned, and what we are seeing is obviously a concern to us in the economy. So I think, to be honest, on the interest rates, what we can commit is, that's why I'm saying we want to make it affordable. Now, whether it's going to be prime plus 10, I'm joking.
Yeah, minus Lutando.
Yes,
and we're in youth month, so I have to ask this question. Any preferred pricing for youth, for the youth-owned businesses and potentially women-owned businesses as well?
Yeah, I mean, those are good ideas. Definitely good ideas, which I mean, we need to factor in, and I think with our partners also see, you know, if your business is women-owned, you know, what do we do? If it's owned by the youth, what do we do? Yeah, we certainly, it's something that I think we need to look at.
Okay.
So, Lutando, we've got a question here from Temba, with especially industries like the construction industry taking quite a huge knock during this time of lockdown and slow economic growth. He wants to diversify his business into agriculture, where he sees quite a few opportunities. You know, would he have to set up a new entity? Would you guys be funding new startups, or would he be able to go and, for instance, apply via his construction company, which is then a total new market that is going in from construction to agriculture? Just that's a scenario. You know, how do you guys see to handle those scenarios in terms of fund ventures and startups versus going into new industries?
You know, I mean, startups are normally a challenge. However, I mean, let's take your example now that you have given, Sean. If somebody has been running a business and they want to diversify, it's much easier to finance, because, as I said, you don't just look at the business, you also look at the jockey. This person has got experience in running a business, and because of market conditions, things have changed in that particular sector. Now they want to diversify. I mean, it is something that I'm certain that we are definitely going to consider. And agriculture, of course, when somebody mentions agriculture, somebody mentions health, somebody mentions ICT, retail, we really get excited, and that's the space that we want to be in.
Okay. And then I think it's going to come back to the property debate quickly, because we've seen there's quite a lot of people that have just shared on the chat, elements around, for instance, the ability to get into student accommodation, or they have available land that's ready for development. Also there was a comment around township and rural development, retail development. Maybe it's not a question, more of a statement, is that I think we need to maybe start looking into those elements around property development and really the transformation that could come with it. And as you know from your own experience, Lutando, in the space, it's something that solutions are needed for. So hopefully you guys will keep it at mind and make sure that we're able to collectively come up with a solution that speaks to the broader need of
that's correct, Sean. And I do want to say this. Look, I mean, I serve on a board of an institution that when I used to work for the National Housing Finance Corporation, we started it. It's actually called Trust for Urban Housing Finance. Now, when we started that institution, its main aim was to actually assist in revitalizing inner cities across South Africa. And to be honest, when we started it, the intention was, again, to support Black entrepreneurs to own properties in the inner cities. Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, East London, PE. I mean, I just recently came back to the board, I think 2 years ago. But I was the person who took the credit committee paper, to the NHFC board way back. I think it was in 2003 or 2004. But the point is, there are institutions like those. I mean, they've grown that business. I remember when we started, it was 20 million. If you look at TAF today, it's almost a 4 billion rand business. And the intention, as I say, was to assist Black business or Black entrepreneurs to own property, okay, in the inner cities. Now, even us as a bank, I mean, property, as I say, I mean, I love property myself at a personal level, but I also do understand, the limitations and the opportunities. That's why for us, because first of all, the fund is not big enough. I mean, I must say that you can't, because property, you're going to need many instances, especially, for example, somebody wants to do student accommodation. You probably want to accommodate 200 kids, or 300 or 400, for these things to really make sense. So I think over time, once we can start getting enough interest and enough resources into the fund, that's why we are very excited. And I'm saying we want development finance institutions to work with us here. The DBSAs of the world, even the African Bank, the EUs. Once we get the fund big enough, then we are able then to say we can start accommodating other sectors. And also collaborate. I mean, as I said, I sit on the board of TAF. I know they've done a good job in some of the inner cities. I know even themselves. I mean, from a 20 million, when I took that proposal, it was 20 million. And now it's almost a 4 billion rand business. So we need to do more. And I agree with you, Sean. But we also need to make sure that we've got, some resources on this specific fund. We won't start with property. We won't start with tourism, but we are not saying we will never touch them.
Yeah. So we just had a comment as well on the chat just around us using a lot of jargon. So just want to maybe unpack some of the stuff that we spoke about. So patient capital, just for our listeners as well, is typically capital that's been put in, that's got no interest-bearing return on it, or it is grant funding that gets provided, whether it's through government or development finance institution. And when we speak about blended finance, means that it gets put into the pot with all the other financing, bringing your interest rates down. Lutando, do you want to maybe share a little bit more around some of those, the types of patient capital that you guys have brought on board?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've covered it. Grant is that, non-interest bearing. And I think we are also obviously coming in with some holidays. I mean, whether it's 12 months, 6 months, depending, how we do these things. There could be some quasi-equity, This is definitely things that some of the organizations or partners that we are talking to are interested in. And I do want to say that, Sean, is that we really want to work with the DFIs. We want to work with government here to support, I think, the township economy and the rural economy. There's a lot that we see in the cities, which is excellent. But I think if township money can stay in the townships, support people in the townships, in the rural, because this thing also helps with migration. I mean, if I get everything in my town, or in my village, in my Dukwa, I mean, there's no need for me to go to East London, honestly speaking. So this is really what we want to do. We want to grow these economies and make sure that people are self-sufficient. It deals with issues of migration as well.
Okay, awesome. So just in closing as well, if any information is needed or if you want to engage with Ubank, the email address that has been provided is that's ANNE.williams@ubank.co.za. Also, this webinar will be available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Entrepreneurship to the Point. Please do tune in for other webinars and subscribe. We've also had just a quick question here, and I think we'll end up with this question from, I'm just scrolling here quickly, from Tabaseng. Tabang, it's actually Tabang Madala from Durban. The question is Ubank 100% black owned? What is the ownership structure or the shareholding structure?
Okay.
Do you feel free to
yes,
maybe
definitely. Yes, no, definitely easy. So as I said that, we actually own by a trust. And because as I said, our history, we used to be called Teba Bank. So our history is in mining. So the trust itself, actually the two trustees, it's what now they call the Minerals Council. It used to be the Chamber of Mines and the National Union of Mine Workers. So those are the two trustees. And I do want to say that also we are probably one of the few banks in the country that we do not declare necessarily dividends to the shareholders, but all the money that we make, we actually take it back to our depositors, either through better rates that they get from us or lower fees that they pay to the bank.
Okay. Awesome. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Lutando, thank you for joining us, the CEO.
Pleasure, Sean.
Also, just for the listeners, more information is available on the website as well, just the letter ubank.co.za. As Lutando mentioned, the fund will be launched and become available in end of July, early August. So please do watch out for that, and we will definitely bring them back to unpack some of the technicalities and the criteria that they're going to be using, and really how you are able to access this fund going forward. Lutando, thank you so much, and to all the listeners out there, have an awesome Friday.
Thank you, Sean, for having us.